Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Capture graduate webinar. My name is Jack Klett, and I am Director of Graduate and Online Initiatives for Capture. And I'm so happy that you are joining today for 3 digital ad strategies for connecting with graduate prospects. We have a solid agenda to get through, and we'll be taking about 30 to 40 minutes of your time. And I will be joined by a special guest that I'm happy to have on today. So let's dive in and take a look at what our agenda is for today. I want to give you a little bit of word on the street, specifically as to how it relates to digital work in graduate recruitment and graduate enrollment. So I'm fortunate that my work allows me to talk with graduate enrollment professionals across the country and specifically focus in on what their successes are, what some of those pain points are. So I have some information to share, at least as it relates to digital today. Then I teased that special guest. So we will be doing a digital dive with Jody Dye. That is not the name of her new podcast, but it could be. Once we have our conversation with Jody, who is a tremendous graduate enrollment professional at Morgridge College of Education, part of the University of Denver, we will go on and kind of dive into those 3 strategies for digital advertising in the graduate space. And then I will leave you with key takeaways, a bit of an implementation checklist so you can kind of hit the ground running after listening today and tee up any future conversations that we might want to have to talk about things going on at your institution, your hopes for the upcoming recruitment cycle, some things you wish had performed a little bit better the past recruitment cycle, and so on. So let's go ahead and get started. It's an ambitious agenda for us to cover. So let's get started. I want to begin with a bit of that word on the street. So as I mentioned in my work, I spent a lot of time talking with graduate enrollment professionals about what they are experiencing. Recently, I've been spending a good deal of time talking with them about digital marketing and digital advertising. So here is a bit of a sample of what I've been told. Jack, we have no budget for digital. Jack, it's so expensive. So you see those dollar signs in terms of budget. And that's particularly important right now because we do know that there are a good deal of budget constraints and some budget concern as it relates to certainly to COVID and its potential impacts on enrollment and on institutional budgets. Also hearing that marketing is too busy with undergrad or is too short-staffed or is having to deal with COVID response and therefore a lot of content development. They just don't have the bandwidth to deal with grad. Those of us who have spent time in graduate recruitment and enrollment, that's not necessarily the oddest thing we would have heard, that marketing was focused a little bit more on undergrad. We get it. I've spent 20 years in graduate enrollment, and I'm also kind of used to that being the response. And that continues to be kind of the word on the street. There is no way we can keep up with our competition. This is something that we also hear routinely because there are folks that feel that their competitors are just doing a far better job with digital advertising and digital marketing than they are. Often, though, I caution folks, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, you may think that your competitor is spending a ton of money in digital because of the way that you're seeing them everywhere, but there's probably a reason why you in particular are seeing them everywhere, and that may not be as expensive as you actually think that it is. Then there's just the general sense of where do I even begin? There are literally so many options, and this is completely true. There are a lot of options in terms of digital advertising, social marketing, digital marketing. And the fact is that the digital advertising and digital marketing space, and therefore the products and tools that exist within that space, are evolving at a rate that aligns with just how quickly technology as a whole evolves. And that can leave us feeling a little bit overwhelmed by all of the various options. So that's why I'm giving 3 simple strategies today. I'm trying to simplify this as much as possible so you can hit the ground running and get started immediately following this webinar. Okay, I mentioned some, I feel like, bad news. I feel like everything that I said was the word on the street was not necessarily like the best news. So I'm happy to report there is good news. So here is the current state of what we're dealing with. Institutions, likely your own, dealing with multiple pressures. You have uncertainty around enrollments. That means that there's uncertainty in terms of tuition revenue. Many of you may be feeling budget freezes or worse. Many graduate enrollment teams are under constrained budgets already as it is. Even if we go before COVID, graduate was often operating on more constrained budgets, certainly in comparison to our undergraduate colleagues. Further cuts on budget earmarked for graduate recruitment can have some really serious implications on your ability to do your job and to meet those enrollment goals. Many of you in graduate enrollment are using kind of some of those more traditional outreach methods, such as print pieces, direct mail, to communicate with your prospective students. Because of your budgets, that print and postage can be expensive, especially as we see an increase in graduate enrollment, which that is part of the good news. We are seeing that. Just yesterday or the day before, there was some data reported out of the clearinghouse that showed that while undergraduate enrollment has dipped during this time, graduate enrollment is up around 3-4%. So that is great to see. But the more interest in graduate education means the more inquiries, means more print, means more postage, means more dollars. So, all right, I feel like I'm still not in full good news mode, so I'm going to get there. With digital advertising, you can expand your reach for less. This webinar will dive into really the world of digital advertising kind of in aggregate to showcase, though, 3 streamlined strategies that will enhance your graduate enrollment, will enhance your graduate recruitment, and I promise you will not break the bank. In some cases, you might even be able to actually spend more with expanded reach. All right, that is our word on the street. And now it is time for me to be joined by my special guest. If you are fortunate to be like Jody, you can experiment and iterate with digital to supplement your other more traditional strategies that have proven to be successful over the years. That is what Jody Dye is doing right now. It's time for our digital dive with Jody Dye. So Jody is Director of Admissions for the Morgridge College of Education at the University of Denver, where she received her MA in higher education. Jody has spent 14 years in enrollment management and higher education administration and has led the admissions effort for Morgridge for the last 6 years. Jody, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited that you're here. You and I, it's no secret that Morgridge partners with Capture, and along with some other folks to do some really fun digital work. You and I now, I think, have been talking, I feel like the better part of a year. Yeah. So I'm excited that you are here and able to share some of the things that you're doing. So are you okay if I just kind of dive in?
Yeah, please ask away. Happy to share.
All right. I mean, it is the digital dive, so I should dive in.
It is quite the name, I have to say.
All right. So why should folks include digital in their enrollment marketing strategy? I feel like this is a bit of a kind of a softball to start with, but I'd be interested to hear, as someone who is a practitioner of digital marketing and digital advertising, why is digital important in an enrollment marketing strategy?
Yeah, good question. A couple things come to mind. And the first is we just recognized the reality of the current marketplace. It's our job to know where prospective students live and where they go for information. And we know that is often in a virtual space. And you mentioned the constrained budgets. And of course, that is at play here, as is many places. And so we were asked to reach more for less. So we were really thinking about how can we reach out to audiences or larger audiences with perhaps fewer resources if possible. And that sort of led us into the digital space. Another plus there is I was not constantly, but quite often getting requests from our dean's team and the folks that hold the purse strings for ROI. And it's so much easier to look at analytics on digital work and quickly turn around those ROI reports to administrators than in what I would have available related to print pieces, for example. The other piece, or perhaps a major piece, is the agility of it all. We're able to look at an ad in real time and see if it's meaningful and motivational to our audience, if it's moving folks to do a call to action that we'd like them to do, or if it's not. And we can pivot pretty quickly in a way that we can't, again, with the print space. So those are two major pieces. And I really like how we can customize audiences. So we can use demographic or psychographic information to be strategic about who we're serving our ads to in really meaningful ways. So I think those are the major reasons why we've moved into the digital space.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head in, I think that digital allows you a degree of nimbleness. Is nimbleness a word? It allows you to be more nimble and kind of really monitor and optimize the messaging and the resonance and relevance of the ad, right? Because you want that call to action to indeed be something that is going to influence a prospective student to learn more, to inquire, to visit. And we're going to be talking about influencing as a key component of a digital strategy here in a moment. The other thing I think is really important that you focused on is that idea of return on investment and ROI. Often it can be a little bit ambiguous to kind of be able to look at a digital campaign and say, oh, yes, this definitely inspired these 10 people to enroll. Now, though, there are tools, and you have that as part of some of the reporting analytics that I know that we're providing for you with the UTM tracking. So UTM, I feel like, has really optimized one's ability to measure that return on investment and measure that attribution of that particular student progressing through the funnel to digital.
Definitely.
Great.
For sure.
All right. So we will continue our dive. How has digital affected the amount of more traditional marketing you do? So things like the print and the direct mail that I mentioned. Now, in your case, it's a little bit different, right? I think that I don't know, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if you were under immense pressure to, find space in the budget to do some of this digital work. You might have been given a little bit of freedom to iterate, but how has digital affected the amount of more traditional work that you've been doing?
Yeah, it's affected it in major ways. And I think one of your first questions about pressure into entering the digital space, I think there might have been a little. To your point, folks around us, our administration, et cetera, we're seeing other competitor ads pop up in their online feeds. So there was a bit of, we see these folks, where are we? I think that drove some motivation and perhaps some pressure to move into the digital environment. But in terms of our print work, I would say even 2 years ago, we really started to minimize the amount of traditional brochures we were printing. We have 9 programs here in the College of Ed, and we had brochures for each program, and they were multi-page and they were expensive to print. And of course, then we'd ship to all of our graduate fairs. And we just slimmed that down in major ways and started moving consciously all of that brag content onto our website and then utilizing digital ads to drive folks to the website. The website is the sole major brag piece of the college. That's the place where we hold the bulk of our information. And so let's send everyone ideally to that space. So this year we haven't printed any brochures. And I know COVID may perhaps be at play there, but honestly, I don't think we were going to print any anyways. We've just made that effort to shore up our print space and not have much at all. I'll give one example of where that's really played out digitally, and that's in our annual report. So our marketing team, who's so amazing, creates an annual report every year. It's a big brag piece for us. It's a showcase component, highlights the success of the college. Very large, lots of graphics, lots of colors and photos, very expensive to print. We use that as our view book too. We use it for external and internal audiences. I believe we printed 100 annual reports, and they're put away in our dean's office for VIPs. Outside of that, we just have a digital link that we splash over everything. So over all our digital ads, in our social platforms, in our email drips, and we're able to watch the analytics of that link again in real time and see if folks are interacting with that piece. And we can report back to the dean if folks are interacting with that piece. And I just can't do that with print. I can't tell if somebody opens a brochure once they leave our office. I don't know if they look at it 2 times or if it drives them to the web. So that's an example of how digital has affected our print. And honestly, we put all the money that we were doing in print, we put it towards the digital space.
Yeah. And, and to be clear, I don't think I don't think that we are in any way advocating that people stop doing print or stop doing any type of direct mail. Mm-hmm. This really is about finding that correct recruitment, enrollment, marketing mix, knowing that it can be multi-channel. I mean, even when we talk about digital has a number of pathways in terms of its ability to reach a prospective student. And that mix is dynamic and in some ways even a bit fluid. So giving yourself the space and the ability to iterate and to test and to kind of move some of these things around, you really can go a long way, I think, of finding what is an optimal mix for your specific program, for your specific institution. And that really is what we're advocating for.
Sure. Good clarification there. It will be interesting to see. I mean, we are pretty minimal in our print pieces here. So to your point, it'll be interesting to see if we need to perhaps supplement that. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, we'll measure. That's the great thing. You can always measure and figure it out later.
Right.
So you touched on this. So this is a good opportunity to bring it in as kind of a full question. So given the impacts of COVID, have you modified your strategy? And if you have, how have you done that? What changes have you made?
Yeah, I appreciate mentioning the elephant in the room, I suppose, right. Leaning into it. Yeah, for sure. We have modified our messaging in pretty notable ways, I think, currently, really leaning into the realities of all of our situations and the great equalizer that is COVID. So when you're meeting with prospective students, they're seeing my living room and I'm seeing their living room, and they may see my 4-year-old. Yes, exactly. They may see my colleague's puppy, etc. Just leaning into that, our messaging is, we hope, shares that sentiment that we're in this together. We're working alongside you through this environment, and we can continue to help you achieve your goals and your success. We're doing it all together. One thing particularly related to digital, though, that is also related to COVID, is the fact that we know folks may not want to move away from home in ways that they have in the past. So we're a private institution. Our tuition is the same in-state or out of state. So we recruit nationally quite a bit. And we've curtailed that to focus more on a regional focus. And what that means is perhaps modifying our value propositions a bit. So our pieces normally highlight the mountains and skiing and some of the natural beauty that exists in Colorado. And although that's maybe more meaningful for an individual who's looked at the ocean their whole life, may not be a huge value proposition for someone in our own backyard who's looked at the mountains their whole life. So we've had to tweak some of those value props, and we can do that in the digital space. Again, coming back to that agility piece, we can do that pretty easily. And we have done that in terms of being thoughtful of having a really regionally specific message. And then we can geo-target. So utilizing some of the beauty of digital, we can ensure that our ads are being served to a particular group within a particular region.
Yeah, I love that you brought up geotargeting. We won't be talking about geotargeting specifically in this webinar, but it is something that certainly we deploy in certain situations for some of our partners. I do want other folks, let folks know who are watching us today that you're seeing these questions on screen. You're also seeing just a sampling of some of the digital ad creative that's being used in the mortgage campaign. Just so folks are like, what is this that I'm seeing? Am I seeing advertising that's pushing me to mortgage while I'm watching this webinar? What's happening?
Terrible thing.
So we're getting to kind of one of our last questions here, but you are you're doing a lot of experimentation, a lot of iteration with digital. You have an excellent, as you brought them up, you have an excellent in-house kind of marketing team and crew. You're partnering with Capture for some things. You're partnering with some others for some other campaigns. So what has inspired you to do so much of this kind of tinkering and experimentation with digital?
The first thing I would say is our team, and I know we've already mentioned it, but if you can surround yourself with competent, savvy folks in digital space, that is so valuable. So much inspiration comes from our collaborative spirit within the team and having folks on board that really understand this particular platform and channel. Besides that, I think it's just been the opportunity to experiment. It's fun. It is a privileged position, I would say, a bit. I've had a little bit of loosening of the strings from our dean's office and our administration to try things out in different ways. And we have done different iterations for sure. Again, we're a college of 9 programs, and there's always a sweet spot between promoting the program-specific highlights and the college or institution amenities. And so we've tried doing it all in-house and finding we didn't necessarily have the resources and the expertise to do it in the most effective and meaningful way. We brought it out to one partner who primarily marketed just the college, and we found that's not ideal. So now we are with multiple partners, some promoting the college, some promoting programs, and we found that's been a nicer mix to put it out there and see what comes back, again, because we can see pretty quickly. So I think that's part of the inspiration, is just that it's fun. And it's really fun learning the digital space. It's not static, it's dynamic, it changes a lot. Web retargeting, digital display ads, social platforms. I mean, all of the new vernacular, it's relatively new to me over the last few years. It's fun, and it feels innovative and contemporary.
Look, we've talked about this before. I think even in just discussing the concept of this webinar today, I remember the first ever, and it really wasn't even a digital campaign per se. I suppose we would say it was social marketing, but not the likes of what we see today. But my graduate degree is in political science, and I am a complete politics and government junkie. So I was just astounded by the work that was being done in 2007 and 2008 as part of the Obama campaign's social advertising and social media campaigns. It was fascinating, and we had never seen anything like that before. I mean, people think that Facebook's been around forever. Well, in 2007, 2008, it was still a fairly new medium. And we had a master's program in sustainable design that was launching at then Philadelphia University, where I was working, and I basically just completely stole what the Obama campaign did and employed it for this new master's program. And the response, it was phenomenal. The network of support that formed around that graduate program, it was amazing to see. So, and all of this is just constantly evolving. So even someone, who has the benefit of working in this space every day, I'll talk to a colleague who said, "Oh, do you know that you can now target using geo pings wherever someone has been ever?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, And it's just amazing. You learn stuff new all the time. And
Every day.
yeah. And one of the things that I think is a bit new that you are employing right now, when we talk about digital advertising, we're referring to digital advertising really across the web and across social platforms. In the case of Mortgage, you've also partnered with us to do some digital advertising directly on your .edu itself, the Mortgage website. And we do this through our Engage software. It's our marketing automation platform. And I'll speak about that a little bit toward the end here when we tee up some future conversations. But why did you see this as something that was important to do?
I think we wanted more information at our fingertips and more data to inform how we prioritize outreach in particular. I knew that the Capture product allowed us to learn about the visitors to our website, learn about their behavior, and that we could use that information in, again, meaningful ways to prioritize who we reached out to. And I'm talking more once we saw the information and the analytics related to the applicant behavior or the visitor's behavior on the website, we would prioritize a certain group that seemed very engaged and we would call them. And we would employ and deploy different types of outreach. Mm-hmm. The other piece would be prioritizing what we would talk about. So if we could see a group of folks were always coming back to the financial aid page, we would make our messaging or our outreach focus on one particular area, one criteria, which could be visiting campus or campus resources or financial aid. Mm-hmm. And we could determine that with greater certainty based off their visitation habits on the website. And we just didn't have that information before.
That is, that's great to hear. One, because I myself am a disciple of this concept of behavioral intelligence that is what we talk about so much about at Capture and with partners. And the Engage software is using that behavioral intelligence not only to help empower the outreach ability of your counselors, of your recruiters, mm-hmm. But also to know what digital advertising to deploy to a specific visitor on your website. So I want to provide a little bit of a real life example here of a prospective graduate student being guided along their student enrollment journey by marketing automation, by this digital advertising that's happening on your .edu. And here you see basically the journey of Lisa. So Lisa, and this is a real student. So Lisa visited the website her first time on May 15th, and in so doing was served some interactive content. So this is what we refer to as a progressive identification form. So the next day, May 16th, when she returned to your site, she was provided with 2 quick short form fills, and she completed both of those forms, and in so doing, then became an established inquiry in your CRM. And then just the next day was on the website yet again, at which point she was served some digital ads, marketing automation that triggered with a message to apply, which Lisa did then do. She did so on May 21st, so just a couple days after receiving that application content. She went ahead and became a formal applicant, and then was reminded the very next day when she visited that she still had some outstanding items as part of her application. So a little digital ad popped up on the site, providing guidance and recommendation to complete that process. And then ultimately, about a month later, Lisa was admitted. And therefore, when she came back to the site, she was receiving digital content that was focusing her on taking that next step, which was ultimately to deposit. And at this point, she did. She deposited the very next day, is now enrolled, which is great. So if you take a look, it's and you talk about, again, that ROI and that attribution, you see that she visited 35 times over the course of that window. 151 pages of content was consumed, and she received that dynamic content or those digital ads on your .edu to request info, to apply, to complete the process, and then ultimately deposit. So you have, it looks like, about another 850 folks who are identified like Lisa through this mechanism of Engage. How are you feeling so far about the idea of, digital advertising on your own .edu?
It's fantastic. I'm stopping just to make sure that I choose the right word. We're very pleased this far. Again, I think it just feels quite innovative for us, and we just haven't had this ability to pull back the curtain a bit on applicant and user activity. We just haven't had this type of input before. So I feel really positive about it, and it is changing the way we engage both in digital space and in other channels, per our earlier comment, in the way we engage with prospective students all the way through the funnel. It's changing the way we do it. So that's pretty impactful.
Jody, I want to thank you for giving folks joining today, I think, a little bit of a different way to think about digital, not only in terms of just another tool in our toolbox that we as graduate enrollment professionals get to play with every single day, but also I think your points about experimenting, about iterating, your idea about kind of it's okay to move around some resources and try new things, the idea of digital advertising in a marketing automated way on your website itself. All of this, I think, has been really helpful and has helped people think a bit differently maybe than they were thinking about digital advertising and digital marketing before hearing you tell your tale. So, Jody, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it. Talk soon.
You got it. All right. We've heard Jody's story about, digital advertising and digital marketing in action. So let's get to those 3 digital ad strategies that I mentioned. I feel like we've talked a lot about digital strategy so far, but we have some more to talk about. So I mentioned in the beginning that we often hear graduate enrollment professionals say things like, there are so many options, and how do I keep up with all these different types of digital advertising? And I completely get it. It can sometimes feel a bit overwhelming. And that is why it is best to simplify as much as possible. So I'd like to thank Leonardo da Vinci here for the quote that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. That is exactly right. So before even thinking about what type of digital products you should leverage, we talked a lot about digital prospects. Jody mentioned retargeting and email targeting and display and all of these things. It's important to focus on what the goal of the digital campaign is. Doing this will simplify your options about who to target with the digital ads and what type of digital ad you should be deploying. So for today, we are going to focus on 3 simple strategies and some of the digital products associated with them. If the goal of your campaign is to build awareness, we will cover that today. If the goal is to do some prospecting and increase that top of funnel volume, we'll talk about that today. If the goal is to influence prospective students through their enrollment journey using digital strategy, we will talk about that today. So let's dive in a little bit more closely on each of these strategies. Let's first talk about awareness. I've worked with so many graduate program directors and college deans who felt that people simply didn't know about the existence of their graduate programs. And I can't tell you how many times I had conversations with faculty who wanted to get ad space on big billboards up and down I-95. I live right here in Philadelphia, and Interstate 95 runs right through the city. While I was never a big fan of billboards, I couldn't argue that making people aware of our graduate offerings was indeed a good idea. Digital advertising is a great vehicle to build this awareness. This really is the first place you can exchange some pricey traditional tactics with more effective, less expensive digital work. So, building awareness, if that's your goal, then social marketing is an excellent product vehicle to achieve that goal. It allows you to focus on an unknown audience, right? You're building awareness. So it doesn't make much sense to focus your awareness campaign on people who are already in your CRM. I mean, they're already aware of your existence, therefore they would not be in your CRM, right? They're aware of your existence. They are in your CRM. If they weren't aware, they are not likely to be in your CRM. So you want to go after the unknown audience. You want to make sure, though, that you're using the attributes of people who are aware of you, who are in your CRM, to inform who you're going to target with this advertising. That's why on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, you can build custom audiences based on things like location and education level, types of degrees, undergraduate major, other behaviors and interests that resonate with your unique program. And then you can make sure that only those individuals who meet that criteria are being served the ads in their social platform feeds. These this type of advertising, the social marketing, has higher click rates compared to standard ads and allows for a fairly inexpensive way to build awareness. Okay, so that takes care of awareness. I want to now talk a little bit longer about prospecting, because prospecting is, where you're basically leveraging social marketing in much the same way as you did for awareness building, though now you're specifically asking for people to raise their hand for additional information about graduate study. So same kind of rules. You're going to focus on an unknown audience. You're going to build those custom audiences. You're going to use those targeting filters on the social platform, and you're going to provide these prospective graduate students with an opportunity to opt in some way, to raise that hand and to become part of your CRM and therefore be communicated to as an inquiry. Another wonderful product to use for a prospecting campaign is email targeting. So the social marketing example that I just showed you targets a group of folks who are unknown to you. There are also digital advertising products that allow you to target specific individuals. So think about those lists that you procure from test providers, or perhaps there's a special affinity organization that aligns with a specific graduate program or a set of graduate programs. You want to be able to target these individuals with digital advertising to get them to raise their hand, to opt in. So email targeting is a great way to get your brand and program message in front of individuals most likely to demonstrate interest. So email targeting itself is going to use the email address as a unique identifier. So basically, any device that individual has accessed their email address on, you will be able to target with digital advertising. This allows you to focus on a known audience. You're reaching these student lists, these suspects, if you will, in ways beyond just simply sending them an email or a more expensive way of sending them direct mail and print. And you're using a matching process that takes the email address as a unique identifier and then allows you to target specific individuals. We see social marketing here again, still part of the prospecting strategy, but this time we're going to use the social matching feature to deliver social ads to a known audience. All right. So in the prior cases where we've used social marketing, we're using it to deliver to unknown audiences based on set attributes and custom targeting. In this case, we're doing direct audience matching. So again, those lists of people that you had, those suspects, those lists from other organizations, you can literally upload those into the advertising widget of the social platform of choice and do a matching process whereby you will now be able to serve digital advertising in their social platform news feeds. All right, so we've covered awareness, we've covered prospecting. Now we will move on to influencing. So for influencing, we're focusing exclusively on a known audience. All right, so no more unknowns. These are all folks that are known to you. So we're going to influence prospective graduate students to take specific actions through their enrollment journey. Things like visit, things like apply, deposit, register. Again, focusing on a known audience, focusing on your current pool. And by the way, when you're focusing on your current pool in Grad, it always makes sense to include your young alumni as part of your current pool. You can use digital products for influencing, like email targeting that we talked about, and also like social matching. Again, these are going to be individuals who are already known to you, therefore they likely know about you. So the digital ads that you are providing should have calls to action and information that resonates and pulls them deeper into that enrollment funnel, deeper along their student decision journey. So email targeting and social matching can be really valuable for this particular campaign. Influencing is also important for your graduating seniors. Your graduating seniors, especially right now, are weighing a number of options to go out into a job market that isn't the best right now, or to continue their education by remaining in graduate school. In this particular case, with this population, household IP targeting is a super effective product. And there's a couple reasons why. So household IP targeting allows you, rather than the email address like we do for email targeting, allows you to use the household address to serve digital advertising on any device that is using that IP address location. So this allows you to not only reach the students, but to reach everyone else in the household. So imagine a scenario where you are a senior and you are home for break. And we know that that's something that's happening a lot more quickly right now during COVID. There are a lot of semesters that are ending right around the Thanksgiving break, where students will be returning home and will be home for a bit of a longer duration before the spring term would start up and they would be returning to campus. So this is an opportunity to serve advertising about your graduate programs and your graduate offerings to that household, because it can allow for the facilitation of a conversation about enrolling in graduate school that senior can have with members of her family to talk about the future, be it to enter the world of work or to pursue higher education through graduate education. We continue with influencing, this time focusing on the digital products of web and social retargeting. All right, so we talked about two types of targeting, email targeting and household IP targeting, and now we're talking about retargeting. This is a highly effective way of keeping your graduate offerings top of mind. So it focuses on an engaged audience. All right, you are reaching web visitors who have visited your.edu, and that is super important because they are engaged with you. Since they are engaged with you, they likely want to continue being engaged with you. So you simply make sure that advertising displays for them across the web and in their social feeds. And as is the case with every bit of advertising that we do, be sure to stay relevant by making sure you are deploying responsive design. This is more of a recommendation for folks who are doing some in-house, in-sourced marketing. A lot of companies like Capture automatically do responsive design, but you want to make sure that your digital marketing is indeed responsive design, because this is where folks are reading that content, and it needs to respond accordingly. All right. We're up against it. So key takeaways and the implementation checklist so you can get started on this work. We've now reviewed the 3 strategies of awareness, prospecting, and influencing. So how can you implement? So here's a checklist for you. Identify a major traditional marketing budget line. I recommend print and postage because those budgets tend to be fairly robust. Determine a digital strategy, be it awareness, prospecting, or influencing, to replace that work. Not all of it. Aim for about a 33% reduction in cost or shift in cost from your print and postage to digital, whatever the budget line might be, but aim for about a 33% budget impact. Determine whether or not you're going to provide digital advertising in-house, whether that's going to be something that your marketing team will assist with, or whether or not that needs to be outsourced. Regardless of who's doing it, set metrics for effectiveness and then evaluate the return on investment based on those metrics that you had established at the beginning of the campaign. For future conversations, Capture believes that individual prospective student behaviors must be recognized in order to cultivate these relationships that ultimately lead to a match between the institution and the student. We measure these behaviors. Jody gave you a couple of examples as to how we do that. We measure it through behavioral intelligence, and that then powers all the other solutions and services that we as a company provide, including those in digital advertising, digital marketing, and social marketing. Digital advertising on the web and social feeds, as well as your own institution's website, as we do for Morgridge College of Education at the University of Denver, is super important. It is so much more powerful when you are engaging with prospective students on your .edu, because that is where they are going to learn about you. So you can now deliver digital content in an automated way that is relevant to them when they are most engaged and resonant with the information that they are most seeking. I am always happy to talk about behavioral intelligence, to talk about digital advertising, to talk about other types of ways in which you can cultivate a relationship in a meaningful, relevant way with your prospective graduate students. It's what I do. I've been with Capture since 2016, focused on making sure that the fit between the graduate prospective student and that graduate program and that institution offering that program are aligned. And I believe that we have tremendous tools to make that the case. My name is Jack Klett. I am with Capture Higher Education. It has been my pleasure to speak with all of you today. Drop me a line, shoot me an email. I'm always happy to continue the conversation. Thanks so much, everybody.